Evening, everybody. Welcome to the July 21st, 2020 meeting of the Town of Manchester Planning and Zoning Commission. As we are back in the Zoom format, it's good to see everybody looking healthy and well. With that, I would like to go ahead and have the commission members review the minutes from the June 16th meeting, and let's go ahead and get that out of the way first.
I make a motion that we approve the June meeting minutes as submitted.
Okay, motion on the floor to approve the minutes.
Bob Graham, I second it.
Okay, motion made by Henry Leskinen, seconded by Bob Graham. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and I'll just go in commission order. Commissioner Leskinen?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder?
Aye.
I'm sorry, it should be Councilman. My apologies.
All right.
Commissioner Henderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Burbank?
Aye.
Commissioner Graham?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Motion has been approved unanimously, so the minutes carry without change. I wanted to take two items on the agenda before we get to reports. I wanted to report to the commission that I was invited to sit in on the last town council meeting in order to add some insight, if needed, into our position on the annexation of the Lippy property. Within the meeting, there was about a 30 to 45-minute session where the mayor led the council through some additional language that was proposed by the petitioner to put into the agreement. When asked my position, I made it very clear that from the commission, we believe that this is in the purview of the town, the mayor and the council to approve, disapprove, or change any language offered by the petitioner. However, in one of the pieces of addition, it spoke to the term allocation of water. Now, while this is in dispute its meaning, I did raise a concern with the mayor that any use of a term such as allocation could damage the future or provide a problem for the future of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as in it's very easy to see by the current disagreement in language that allocation could mean a set amount of water provided, and this is in this specific circumstance, or allocation used in any term could mean that there is a specific set of something waiting for a development, a single home, or any entity doing business with the Planning and Zoning Commission. I asked that the mayor not use the language. I believe it in the draft, what was agreed upon, that both the petitioner's language and some town language not necessarily agreeing with the meaning will be in the proposed annexation plan that is yet to go before a public hearing. And let me just explain my position. It is my interpretation as the commission chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission that in the verbiage, it does allude to the fact that there is a set amount of water that the town of Manchester is holding somewhere that is set for the Lippy property, or as we know it, the Old Town development. While I understand that that's in the language, allocation means a guaranteed set of water. Since then, I've had discussion with Rodney over EDUs and water, how water works in the town. Now, of course, any development that wants to be developed within our purview, we have a specific amount of gallonage of water that the town can pump per day. If it meets within that, I don't think it's allocated, it just meets within the amount of water being pumped. So with that all being said, again, I expressed my displeasure at the use of allocation to the mayor. And then the final portion of that, there seemed to be a understanding that in our previous minutes, when the Old Town property was brought to us in January and May of 16, that there was some type of verbiage that led to our, whether it be explicit or even tacit approval of the development. I asked Michelle to send me those minutes, and I have forwarded those to each one of the commission members. And each of you can review that and certainly make your decision on how you feel that the minutes reflect the meeting. From my recollection and from reading the minutes, I don't believe we gave any approval per se or favoritism. We offered suggestions as trying to help someone who has come to us seeking some type of understanding about what the process is. And also, I want to make it clear that in those minutes, that the property at that time was not in our development area. So that was one of the first things that was pointed out by Bobby Moser previously. So again, you have all that information in front of you. That is my interpretation. That is what I said to the mayor and council during the meeting. You certainly have the information to preview and review and take it from there as we move further into this process. Specifically for the annexation of the Lippy property, it appears from what I remember, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, that it looks like we are looking at sometime around October-ish of this year, middle of October, for public hearings to commence by the mayor and council on that annexation plan. With that being said, I will field any questions from the commission members on those items.
Alex, I don't have any questions per se, but I think it would be helpful maybe if you explain what was changed in the proposal that the applicant brought to the mayor and council, specifically in regards to a third property and to a cap on the number of lots that were being proposed on the Lippy property, which were never, ever discussed during the process when we were reviewing the annexation plan.
Thank you, Henry. I can comment pretty quickly on the third proposed property. I did put it on the record that that third property that you mentioned has not been nor was part of any discussions that we had. We mainly concentrated on the Old Town lot and the Lippy property as one and all. So again, I just made it clear to the mayor and council that we had not had any discussions on the third property or even entertained it. When I did talk to Michelle about it, we had kind of, I guess we had kind of in a sense, we had just locked the third property into the other portions that were being brought in as part of this development. So to answer your question or to clarify, we focused on Old Town, we focused on Lippy, but that third lot kind of just morphed its way in because we just didn't address it as its own entity. I'm sure we're going to have to, moving forward, now that it has been brought out and we see that, I think it's going to have to be part of future deliberations on this property. And then there was not much, there was limited discussion on the number of houses per the development. I still think there needs to be some discussion with the town attorney on how the older agreement moves forward into the present day, and how the past agreement allots so many lots, and then it works with the current planning and zoning regulations. So from that perspective, there's no real hard discussion on the total number of properties at this time.
Thank you. I thought there had been some mention that they were going to limit the number of lots on the piece of Lippy that they were annexing to 8 lots and keep the total number at around 40 between Old Town, Lippy, and what we call the third parcel.
I see Mr. Hackett is shaking his head. Yes, I don't remember the specific verbiage during the discussion. I know we did talk about the difference between non-annexation of that property and what building requirements go there versus annexation. But I would have to look back at the record in the minutes to see what a specific number of lots, were being discussed on that. I don't think we're far off from the 40 number, but I don't want to say for sure because I just don't remember in that discussion.
Thanks, Alex.
Sure. Okay. Also, as part of this meeting tonight, I asked Rodney to come on and speak to us about the water sewer issues so we can certainly have a better understanding as we move forward with what the town has, what they don't have, and then how we work along with that. So I will turn the floor over to Rodney, Rodney Kuntz, the Director of Public Works. Thank you for being here tonight, Rodney.
Sure, Alex, thanks. So I just want to reiterate our wastewater treatment plant capacity status. And I'd like to start with verbiage that's right out of our permit, our wastewater treatment plant permit with MDE. And it states, if the most recent 3-year average flow is over 80% of its design capacity, or if it is anticipated to exceed 80% in the following year, a wastewater capacity management plan must be submitted to MDE, which is a fancy way of saying we have to have an expansion plan in place. And I do need to mention that an expansion is not grant funded by the state. That would be 100% on the town. So with that said, our permitted capacity and design right now is 500,000 gallons per day average per year. And of course, 80% of that is 400,000 gallons per day average a year. So our last 3-year average, and that's 2017, 18, 19, we were at 324,000 gallons per day. So with that said, you mentioned the EDU. So MDE has in place guidelines that we must follow for design and planning purposes. And their guidelines are we have to use 250 gallons per day per dwelling unit, and that's water and sewer. Okay. So I ran the numbers. I worked with Michelle on this. I ran the numbers on our potential remaining EDUs in town. That's in town right now. We are at 360 EDUs. And I did not count Lippy at all because I'm not sure where we are with that. Even in town Lippy, I didn't count that. So we're at 360 EDUs, and that equates to 90,000 gallons in addition if we would connect all the EDUs in town right now. So that puts us above the 80% threshold looking at the current EDUs right now in town.
Rodney, this is Bob Graham. The 250 planning guideline by MDE, correct me if I'm wrong, does not include any I&I factor in there, correct?
I think that's all factored in.
You think I&I is factored?
I'm pretty sure that's factored in, yes.
Wow, that seems light. Okay. And do we know from a billing standpoint if the 250 is holding true, so to speak, for Manchester? I know that's a big research project, but
yeah, I can't answer that.
okay.
And I'm not exactly sure on your first question, so I may have to get back to you on that.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. So, Rodney, thank you very much for that work. Is there anything
Sure.
else you would like to add to that?
No, that's the point I wanted to make.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So if I can just say this in a nutshell, then as we move down the line, depending on homes, single family homes or failures of septic within the town, or those that we have that are currently on septic but not sewer, and if they fail, we just keep compounding daily. And then can I also basically say those that are on individuals that are on septic within the town's purview, it's not a good thing if we go over our threshold and we still have these homes on septic and they fail. That creates a problem. Am I correct in saying that?
As they fail, they would be brought online, and that would use up an EDU, and that would take away from our capacity at the treatment plant, if I understand your question correctly.
Yes, you do. I guess my question to you is, let's say we are close to capacity or with our projections at capacity with no sewage treatment plant increase in capacity. What would the town do with a individual homeowner in the town who needed to hook into to have sewer hookup because of a failing septic when there is not capacity?
Wow, that might be a Michelle question. What would we do?
Are you saying no? Just put it in buckets, Michelle? I mean, I don't.
I'd be like,
I
you
mean-
have to get an outhouse. I don't know. I really don't know.
Well,
We never-
I think I can answer that. I mean, if they fail after we hit 80%, as they fail, I mean, at that point, we have to have the ball rolling toward an expansion. An expansion is a 5-year process. So once we hit that 80% threshold, we have to have a plan in place moving forward toward an expansion. So if they would fail at or above the 80%, I mean, it's a health issue. I think I'm answering this correctly. We would have to connect them as long as we have that plan in place.
Okay, and you say, and that's what I thought, but I just wanted to hear it from a much more educated person in this than I am. So with
Okay.
saying that, MDE would say, okay, you're at 84, 85%. We know at the farthest out of 5 years, you'll have an upgraded plant that can handle this larger capacity and will go back well below that 80%.
Right. Once the expansion is completed, then yeah, of course. Yes.
Okay.
Say we went from 500,000 gallons a day to a permitted capacity and design capacity at 750,000 gallons a day, of course, and then that would put us way below that 80% threshold.
Sure.
At that point.
Sure.
Rodney, do in that number, that 360 number that we're using, or 340 number, that includes the high school, Manchester Valley? Is that in numbers?
Pardon me?
Is the high school in your numbers already? The current, that 3-year average number you gave us at like 3,
Mm-hmm.
including the high school?
Yeah,
So,
they're already hooked up. The
yeah, so
360 is in the queue. That's what's left in the town that could be connected.
Yeah. So do we need to add another increase factor on 360 onto the high school? Like, if per unit, what are we supposed to add capacity wise per student at the high school? Like, three.
Well, that would fall under commercial, I think, which is by the acre.
Okay.
I think it's 700 EDUs per
Yeah,
acre.
that's correct, Rodney. Now, the
Correct.
high school will fall under commercial when it comes to the actual calculations, when it comes to what the numbers for sewer would be. So we wouldn't look at it as a per student, by per student. So whatever the total acreage was of the where the high school is now, we looked at it as usable acreage. So if let's say it was 20 acres, I know it's probably not that, but only 15 acres were usable. If you do the calculations, it'd be 700 gallons per usable acre, which would be 700 gallons times 15 acres is how they would have come up with the potential demand that would come out of the high school for that when they did the calculations. And then, of course, sort of going back to the billing question, when we look at it, existing usage is pretty much exactly what's being used today by the bill. So we get that information from Manchester. And for the triennial update, it showed actual sewer usage. Let me get that real quick. Was a total of 307 gallons. This was at the time of the update. So that was back in 2017 terms, 307,000 gallons a day versus 500 gallons a day. That is the capacity of the plant. And we're showing for the future planning, a total of, including everything that we calculated, 412,000 gallons total. That includes all the potential infill, all of the any property that could be developed, which sometimes our calculations may actually be more higher than above what Manchester actually has. Rodney and I talked about that the other day, and our numbers are a lot higher. So we actually may be projecting even further, adding more capacity than actually more demand than actually what's going to be there. So even in future, which is 0 to 10 or 7 to 10 years, we're showing 412,000 gallons total. That's all residential and all commercial industrial that we have data for. That's in the future, all the way to the future planning section of the water and sewer master plan.
Well, I came up with 411, so I'm not doing too bad. Hey, Price, are you there?
Not bad at all.
Hey,
Yes.
Price, I had a question. I had a question earlier. The 250 gallons per day that the MDE per their guidelines, does that include I&I?
I don't think that, I don't know that they actually truly include I&I in that. I think that
Okay.
may include the drought tolerance, but the 250, I don't know if it includes I&I, since each potential system may have a different I&I issue. But I do know, working with other towns in and around the county, that after billing, we have come to find that the 250 is potentially a little on the heavy end when it comes to both water and sewer. It's usually a lot less than that, but it's one of those where residential may be a little on the heavy end at 250, but commercial and industrial, some of those may not actually use that total amount of potential demand that they have. So if a commercial site is calculated to have 400,000, 30,000 gallons a day, because the way the site is designed, or just because it's 10,000 acres or 10 acres, and what they'll actually end up doing is they won't use that much. So the site could be zoned commercial and have 8,000 gallons potential demand, but the only thing that goes in there is maybe a barber shop, and they may or may not use much water. So they have this 8,000 gallons or whatever that demand is that was calculated, but they're actually not going to be using it because it's only a barber shop that may have 1 or 2 sinks and then a toilet, and that's it. So they may only use 30 gallons a day. That makes sense?
Yes, thanks, Price.
Okay, well, I think that that helps everybody on the commission understand where we are with water and sewer as we move forward. Does anybody from the commission have any questions for Rodney? Okay, thank you, Rodney. I appreciate
you.
it.
Sure.
Let's head back into the regular order. Michelle, do you have anything to report for staff in town?
I don't, unfortunately, I wasn't involved in the town meeting, so I figured you were reporting that. The only thing I want to say staff-wise is for our next meeting, we will have Equine Meadows back. They're looking for preliminary. The school is ready for their variable sign approval, so they're gonna be heading in with some design and looking for some regulation and guidance on what they can do with that. And that's all I really have.
And Michelle,
Okay,
that's the
so
high school
that,
looking for a sign?
Yes.
so that'll be August 18th, Michelle, at, are we gonna be able to meet in person?
We don't know. Yeah, that's August 18th.
Okay. And will we be able to meet in person, or is that just another fleeting fantasy that I keep having?
I think you might be fantasizing. I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's Zoom till otherwise notified. Sounds good. All right. August 18th, next meeting at 7 p.m. via Zoom, unless there is the miracle on Manchester happens. All right. Theo, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add from the council perspective.
No, because I too was out of town, haven't received the minutes yet. So I do appreciate Mr. Chairman attending that meeting and providing such an excellent summary this evening. So Alex, thank you.
My pleasure. Very interesting to sit in and listen. Thank you, Dale. Appreciate it. Price, do you have anything you want to add from the county perspective?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. And for some reason, my video is not working. So all you get to do is hear me right now. Today, we started our first round of presentations to the County Planning Commission for the by request rezonings. I don't know if I don't think I forwarded it to you, but the Pentex property withdrew their rezoning request at this time. So that is not moving forward. They do have to the 18th to potentially ask again. That's the last of our by request rezonings, but this time they withdrew their request and they're sort of looking at their options of what potentially can be done. So as you may know, that property majority is R40,000 with the small chunk up front on 30 that is commercial. And then I've also presented today and got the Planning Commission to certify consistency with the Water and Sewer Master Plan, the 2020 spring amendments that have been brought forward. I'll be going in front of the Board of County Commissioners on Thursday to brief them, but also ask to go to public hearing. And that'll be August 13th to be the public hearing for the Water and Sewer Master Plan amendments.
Price, whose responsibility is it within the adequate facilities ordinance for the county to deal with emergency fire and EMS services? Thank you very much for providing those plans for my review. I'm not very satisfied that the proposal for the current standards that they use are based in any type of NFPA standard or any other reasonable standard. To use a term, it looks like they threw some dice at the wall and decided that's what they were going to use. So is that come from public safety, Campbell shop, or where does that all come from?
You're correct. It comes from public safety, from Scott Campbell's shop. They're the ones that come up with those numbers. I do know when I started with the county 5 years ago, they went through a lull in essence where they had no numbers at all. They didn't have anybody that was doing that work. It's been about a year and a half now, I believe. They just started again, and they're in essence back to where they should have been. But yeah, Scott Campbell's office in public safety, they're the ones that take care of that, look at those numbers and come up with the calculations and then provide those to Clay Black, who does the actual overall concurrency management for when it looks at the county for everything, schools, fire, EMS, police, all that aspect of things. But when it comes to fire and EMS, that comes out of public safety in Scott Campbell's office.
Okay, thank you. I'll contact them with my concerns. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Pricey, did you have anything else you needed to add? I'm sorry, I muted you before I gave you a chance to finish. before I give you a chance to finish?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
All right, great. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the order? If not, we will adjourn and go into our work session on Patriots Overlook. Just as a note, Larry, when Commission Member Burbank went offline due to the storm and his internet provider, so I'm still having some wetness here, so I don't know how soon he'll be back. But Henry, I am acknowledging the fact that you cannot participate in this due to a conflict of interest. So it is your choice to sit in and listen, or you can leave after the meeting has been completed.
I'll probably leave just so that there's no look of impropriety.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Anything else for the good of the order?
No, I just want to reiterate Dale's statement to you, Alex, for attending the meeting and stating our position and making sure that the thoughts of the commission were represented at the council meeting.
My pleasure. Again, certainly an interesting meeting. Learned quite a bit from the process. So it was my pleasure to go. Okay, with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Commissioner Graham,
I'll second that motion.
seconded by Commissioner Luskinen. Thank you all, and we will adjourn from the public meeting and go into the work session. Thank you.